Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabel, and I'm part of the executive committee of PARSUC. And for those that don't know about us and are joining us for the first time, PARSUC is a Portuguese association of researchers and students in the United Kingdom, an independent and non-to-profit organization without a political affiliation, which aims to represent the interests of Portuguese students and researchers in the UK. We function as a network to promote the research done by the PARSUC members and to bring the community together and researchers in Portugal and in Portuguese-speaking countries. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for registering for this ENVOLVE training program, a partnership between PARSUC and the Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian. Today we also have Marcia Costa, which is the current president of PARSUC. Marcia, if you would like just to say a few words.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking you, Isabel, obviously, for organizing these events and brilliant explanation of PARSUC, of what PARSUC is and what our aims are. Once again, thank you Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian for the continuous support of PARSUC for the past, I can't remember how many years. And we are very pleased with this partnership and we hope it's fruitful and moving forward, we can count on you for more initiatives together. Thank Dawn for being here today and for agreeing to speak with you guys. And obviously, once again, congratulations to everyone who's part of this program. And I wish you the best of luck with your research and any future projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just some housekeeping. I want to let everyone know that the webinar is being recorded for educational purposes. And if you don't have the microphones muted, I would like to ask you to please do so. And please feel free to leave the cameras on. Also, just a reminder, some feedback forms will be sent to you by email within the next few days, if not today. And this really helps us with future training. So I really encourage all of you to fill that in. So this is the second session of the Evolving Training Program, and we will be hearing about obtaining research funding. The session today will include a presentation by Dr. Dawn Duke, and at the end will be time for Q&A, but as we want this, again, to be as interactive as possible, please do use the chat, and if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. And let's start. A key step in a research journey is obtaining funding to support their individual research goals. For early career researchers, navigating the research funding landscape can be daunting. In this workshop, we will discuss the key criteria funders use to allocate research funding and demystify the funding process. It's a great pleasure to introduce you, the speaker, Dr. Dawn Duke. She's the head of programs for the African Research Excellence Fund. Dawn oversees RF professional development programs for postdoc researchers in Africa, supporting researchers' transition to independence. Previously, she was the head of researcher development and engagement at the University of Surrey, supporting doctoral and early career researchers throughout their career journeys and providing supervisor training. Dawn is also an author and editor for the SAGE Success in Research book series, an HR Excellence in Research peer reviewer, and a member of the UK Council for Graduate Education Executive Committee and member of the VITAI Working Group for Continuing Professional Development for Researcher Developers. And Dawn, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Lovely to have you. We can have it very informal. I've put together stuff and I can talk, but it's so much better if you're inputting. And I also have I have put together some activities. So if you could pass on host to me, Isabel, that way I can put them in groups to get them chatting so we can do one or two things. Although I am also very conscious it's late at night and everyone might be a little bit on the tired side. So we'll do a mixture between me talking and you guys doing stuff. So let's see. I will grab my slides. So Arif, we, can you see that? Okay, is that just one slide or is it?
We see it with the notes.
You see it with the notes, right? Display settings, just regular, oh, for goodness sake, just do it right. Is that better? Is that right?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So Arif does basically a 2-week course on grant writing that's split with some time for people to do some writing of their own. So what I've done is a super condensed version with some highlights so that you can all get a gist and really what I've done is tried to take top tips that we've gained in our time doing this from people who have been successful at getting funding, the ups and downs we've heard from various different researchers and experienced ourselves, and also our ear to funders and reviewers about what they're looking for. So basically this couple hours is going to be the top tips that I've crunched together and thrown into 2 hours worth of content about that. So a bit of a whirlwind worth of information, but hopefully the tips will get you started and into the right place. And the first tip, and one of the most important, is to really start to know your potential funders. You should look at potential funders from as broad a spectrum as you can, and they can come from lots of different places. So there might be pots of money within institutions that you're working in, and sometimes that might be little pots of money, sometimes it might be bigger, but get to know what those are. And again, there can be national funding. So that can be the nation you come from. So there could be funding from your particular where you originate, but also where your institution is. So it's worth looking at both. International funding is obviously a big pot of money. So European funding, there's different funding that is quite global. So lots of things like Wellcome Trust, MRC, NIH fund worldwide. So looking at those. And there's also discipline specific funding. So and often that can be even specific subdiscipline areas. So keeping an eye on that. And really hot right now is quite a lot of interdisciplinary funding that's encouraging people to branch out and bring in different types of people and different types of collaboration. Right, so I thought we could do a little bit of sharing. And in the chat, if people could put in different funding streams that they know about, that might be really quite helpful. Anybody have any idea of some funding streams? Somebody has to know some. Oh, there we go. Got some things coming in. There we go. Yeah, Wellcome Trust. That's a good one. Some pharma have different ones. And there can be even just websites like Your Access has a good website that collects different types of European funding. What I'll do is I'll save the chat and then we can have a list so people can see different places. Getting a little bit of a list there. Any other thoughts? If you think of anything as we go on, then we can throw those in. It's really helpful just to ask people, where did you get funding from? Because the more you know, then the better you can get a feel for what could be available for you. And then what I would ask you to do is have a little look at different funding, different funders. And it's worth taking some time, even when you're not looking for funding, if it's beforehand or whatever, but read the websites and make some really clear notes about what the funders are looking for. Look at keywords they use. If they're using, if they're looking for interdisciplinary, if they're looking for blue skies, if they're looking for clinical, whatever they're looking for, think about what the key words and phrases are that they're looking for, because funders are really, really explicit about what they want. They're not hiding anything. It will be right out there. And also you can look at past funding calls and you can see if there are any standard times that had an idea of their funding cycle, and that can help your funders email alerts, pay attention, just get to know your funders really, really well. So if you find around 3 that you think are your best bets, start to make a good relationship with them. Know what they want, start liking them on LinkedIn, share what they're sharing, and really, really know what they're about. And also, start talking to people. So think about what your funders might like and talk to them. Lots of people don't realize, especially in early career stage, that you can talk to funders. You can absolutely chat with them, and talk to them about the research you're interested in and what you want to do, and see if that's something they're interested in funding. Because they want people to apply that are right for them. They want to make that is that money brings money. So it is worth starting to get your foot in with funding. So things like fellowships that you're on, that's fantastic. That's starting your funding portfolio. These small grants, small fellowships, even travel grants and equipment grants, these are things that start to show that you're able to not only successfully bring in money, but you're able to deliver on what the money gives you. So if you get a small short-term grant that gets you pilot data, not only does that help you get to the next stage of your funding, but it also gives you just a bit of credibility about your ability to manage a research project that's funded. It's also really good practice. So some of those smaller ones don't take as long, and you get the practice that you might need. Are you able to hear me, Isabel? I'm a little worried because I can't see anything.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So all of these things give funders confidence in you, and it starts to build who you are. And actually, small grants can add up. I do know several academics that make quite a good career on getting a lot of small grant funding that really successfully helps them get through at least dry spots in their grant writing career. So it's worth it, especially if the small grants don't take as much time to write as other things. So don't always feel like you have to go for big, huge things. Sometimes look at the variety of different things you can apply for, because that can really help you. And after you're thinking of funders, it's worth thinking about reviewers and what they're looking for. So who are reviewers? Can anyone shout out? Because I'm feeling really lonely, like I'm just alone in the world and I can't see anyone right now. So
can you repeat the question again?
Who are reviewers for grants? What do you reckon they look like?
So we have here one, Diogo Martins. Diogo, would you like to jump in and interact?
I mean, I could. Thanks for the question, Isabel. I mean, reviewers for grant applications, they usually comprise of internal staff members. For example, I work at Welcome, so sometimes I'm a peer reviewer at early stages, but then any grant application then goes out for the majority of the funders for peer review in terms of other academics who are known in that particular field, and they can, blindly look at the proposal and objectively assess it. So there's usually different layers, but they look very normal. They look humans like me.
So they are human. That's good. Definitely human. And yeah, so you'll have your initial review by the funders, because they definitely want to make sure they're only sending out the right applications to reviewers. But then reviewers are just academics, aren't they? So you probably know people in your institutions that review different grants. Yeah. And an interesting thing about reviewing grants and being asked to review grants, especially when you're talking about early career fellowship type grants, is they're from a broader pool, I'd say, of specialty area than you might think, especially fellowships. So my husband is an academic as well, and he got on the academic ladder through getting a UKRI fellowship. And so in return, they hit him up all the time to be a reviewer for fellowships. And the panels that he's on really have a very broad range of different types of research that he's reviewing. So it's important to realize that they're academics, they do their own research, but that research might be quite different to yours. So getting to know where that reviewer's head is at and what they're thinking and what they're like is really, really important. So they are tired and they're given some very formal criteria often. And you can see the formal criteria. It will be different for different grants. So there'll be things like importance, originality, and impact. They'll be rating your design and your strategy, how deliverable it is, things on ethics and governance and value for money. And it's really important that you look and you see what it is people are looking for so that you know that. There may also be some other special criteria, and maybe they're looking for early career researchers, maybe they're looking for strategic areas. There probably will be lots of different words like these things in bubbles, so clinical need, potential impact, and all of these things the reviewers will have on a list, and they'll be rating different people. And again, these are just normal academics. They're like your PIs, your supervisors, the people down the hall from you. They're busy, they're overworked, they're tired, and they're looking at these criteria and they're wanting to be able to assess them really quickly. They're wanting to be able to see it or not. So being kind to your reviewer is always a very important thing. And kind of more simply, what they have in their head, they are thinking practically, right, will they be able to deliver on what we're looking for? So do you trust this person? Do you trust that what they're writing, this is exciting, that it's important, it's going to make a difference? So that's where some of that money makes money comes in. So that shows a portfolio of a person who's starting to do things. They're going to ask themselves very specific questions about why this research compared to all these other people who've put in. Why is this research important? Why should it be you? Why are you the person who should be doing this? And the why you part is really important for things like fellowships. So there's always, when you're looking at funding, the research is important. People are wanting to fund really good research, but when you're talking about fellowships, equally, people are wanting to fund potential research leaders, so that why you comes to the top as being really, really important, and making sure you emphasize that. That's always really hard too, because it's hard to sell ourselves sometimes, I think, and say, no, I'm the best person to do this. But putting yourself out there and being able to say that clearly for people, so that these tired academic reviewers that really want to make the best decisions can easily see, yes, this is the reason why this person and why this research. And the last question, so what, is so very important. You can say, oh, this research is exciting and I'm exciting, but so what? What is the difference it's going to make? What's the difference it's going to make to the field? What's the difference it's going to make to society, or whatever it is that that funding body cares about most? So it's linking your research and what you want to achieve with it with those goals of whatever funding body you're putting your grant into. And if you
Dawn, can I ask a question?
Yep, please do.
How do you show that you are, how can you prove that you can be trusted, for example, when you write a grant? Is it through publications or?
So publications, and again, previous money can be some bits. Other things, again, it's providing different types of evidence. So you're saying that you're good at that. What's the evidence? So publication can be the evidence, but equally, different types of activities could be evidence. Training could be evidence. You yourself being mentors could be evidence. You engaging the public or engaging with different types of debate can be evidence. Those type of things, particularly that show leadership. When you're talking fellowships, often what they're asking for is leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
And leadership is such a nebulous term, yeah, especially when you're coming up, because you're not leading a whole group of anything yet. So thinking about different aspects of leadership. Leadership can just be helping people that are a little bit more junior to you. So who are you training? Who are you helping? Leadership can be engaging with the public. Leadership can be working with your discipline specific type of conference or things like that, or with Parsuk or these various things. So Isabel, you're doing definite leadership activities right now, and what you're doing is stuff that evidences that you're a person that has leadership potential and could be a research leader. So it's just building all those things together and matching the criteria. And it does, sometimes it takes talking these things out with other people can be really helpful to find people who look like reviewers, so other academics, and maybe people who are different to your normal line manager or supervisor, because they're so close to you, sometimes they don't see things because they're just so used to you. But just finding someone else and talking about different things you do and having them help you see what you've developed and where your strengths are.
Thank you.
Can be hard to find them in yourself sometimes, I think. Am I going the right way? Let me see.
Oh, can I ask something else related? Which is a bit more about selling ourselves, because it's something that seems to be easy, but it turns out to be the most complicated things to do.
Really is.
At least can you give us some tips on what not to do? Because I think we basically have one idea what we should write at least, but what should avoid writing, because we always sometimes even overestimate ourselves, or yeah, it's really complicated. What should we avoid definitely on writing for, or either for grants or for fellowships?
I think the most important thing is to back things up with evidence. It's very much like research writing, and I think I'm just skipped through to a slide where I'm going to talk about other parts of a proposal. But when you say something, when you say you have leadership skills or that you're developing leaderships, I think saying I'm the most fantastic leader in the world probably is overstating it, because anyone who has done any leadership in their entire life would never feel like they could say that. Because it's like, yeah, you don't know. But saying that you're working on leadership and that it's something that you care about and aspire to. Now that hits right. And then evidence how you're doing that. So what is it that you're doing that demonstrates that? And I think that's a key part of all applications for everything. When you assert something that that you are developing excellent communication skills, then you have to say how you're doing that. So you're going to conference, you're doing these things, and what then might make you special, because most people are going to conference and most people are publishing, are you doing that for different audiences? Are you stretching yourself? How are you doing that? How would you make that stand out? And how are you wanting to be even more? So I think that aspiring to be even more than you are always plays well. So not that I'm the best I could ever be, then why do you need this fellowship? But that I want to be more and I want to do more. And this fellowship will help me do that. This is what I've done. These are things I care about, and I want to be even better. So I think that to me, that's where I would see it. I don't know, Diego, did you have some thoughts on that from somebody working in funding?
No, I think you captured really well. I don't usually review proposals for fellowships. It's mostly different types of partnerships. But I think what's common is the ability to look at a trail of different projects that have demonstrated impact and have demonstrated, strong relationships, either from a individual level, institutional level. We also tend to look very closely at, how many years has this particular person been dedicating to something? Have their interests changed? How you explain that? So there's never a wrong answer, but I think it's really about how you demonstrate, your path and how you provide evidence, and always avoid trying to oversell too much what you have, but then showing the humility that you want to grow and you have that kind of space and, this is the right opportunity for me. I always feel that funders, whichever funder it is, I always feel very happy to see that we're also selected for that person's path and career pathway ahead. So always making sure that you really speak to that nature and the spirit of that particular fellowship is super, super important.
Yeah. Funders want to, they're doing it because they want to make a difference. They want to make a difference. So you showing them a complete package, maybe they can't make as much difference as somebody who is striving to do even more. So you can say, yes, I've done this, but I want to do more. And I'm doing this because I'm really passionate about. So I think that's the thing. You're selling yourself, but you want to sell yourself for your research and your passion and where you want to go, not necessarily seem self-serving, which is always an interesting line to walk. But again, I would say, just like the funders, thinking about how you can better understand reviewers, talk to people who review, talk to them about, they can't give you details, obviously, about individuals or anything on panels, but they can tell you what they're looking for. They can give you examples of what they would think would be a positive way to put things. And funders often have lists of reviewers they use. It's quite open. You can find out in your department. You can ask who's reviewing different things. They're quite open. And becoming a reviewer yourself for various different things can really start to help you understand the review process. And that may be for publications. I know that's a quite different aspect, but actually reviewing publications can help you with your writing, because you start to get that critical eye, that reviewer eye on your writing. but maybe for a conference. So if you're having a conference, you can volunteer to help review abstracts. Again, that can start to put you in that frame of mind. And then the discipline might have little bits of funding that they're giving away. You can say, I could review some of those for you. People are always looking for people to volunteer for things. And it is more work, and reviewing isn't easy, but it really does help you start to understand the frame of mind of somebody that's looking at research from an outside perspective. And it's that stepping back, I think, that's really important. Right, so that one. My next thing is on your research niche. And this is a very pre-proposal thing, but I think perhaps for our early stage researchers, it's one of the most important things to get down. Before anything else, it's really understanding where you fit in your research area, in your research life. What is your niche? What makes you special? How do you differentiate yourself from your supervisors, from your managers, from other people in the field? Now, this is a really important thing, and it's more important than I think most early stage researchers think, because there's only so much funding out there, and funders want to fund the best person for the job. You directly competing with your manager or your supervisor or any already established researcher to do the exact same thing they're doing is putting you at a disadvantage, because they're already established. They have a track record. They can show they can do this. So finding your niche, your thing that makes you special, the reason why the money should go to you, the reason why you're going to add value that isn't out there already, is a really important thing to think about. And if you don't know what that is, you can't tell the funders what it is. They're not going to see it. So it's, and often in people's minds, it's really quite nebulous. It's not as explicit as perhaps it could be. So it's really these questions. What makes you unique? What makes you special? And it's a bigger thing than a research question. So we'll talk about research questions in a little bit. But your research niche is this kind of big area that you're going to plop yourself into, and then loads of research questions will come out of it. So it's kind of setting yourself up. Yeah, so it's these unique selling points, and how do you find them? Well, so it comes from knowing your field and looking at your field and thinking about what is it that isn't being done. And sometimes some nice research niches you can build by perhaps adding a different technique, a different understanding. Oh, we're going to take this technique from this other area into this area. Location can be a niche too. So there can be reasons why this needs to be done in this country that's different to other countries. Now, you can't just be, oh, nobody ever did it in Nigeria, so it's got to be important to do it in Nigeria. Well, is it? Why is it important? So it has to have that why. You have to be able to say, because the context is different, the social system is different, these things that have been done before don't apply here. So that can build a niche. But it's thinking about, it's not, it shouldn't be forced. It really should be what the research needs. Research needs to have something done differently, and you prepare yourself to do it. Now, postdoc is a fantastic time to start thinking about how you build your niche, because you have a little bit maybe more mobility, and you're young, so young-ish. Wasn't necessarily super young, but you're not as set in your ways as some of the older academics. So you can often see things in that little bit different way and be more accepting of new technologies or new ways of looking at things. So I think just thinking about that and what you can bring, what added value you can bring to something on a little bit of a different scale. Doing something more interdisciplinary can often help. Doing something across sector can be an interesting niche. So that would build something in there. So thinking about that is a really important thing. So I will just give you a few minutes now, if you can just think for yourself and maybe scribble down some of these important things we've talked about. So this is all about what makes you stand out. How can you evidence maybe leadership qualities? You can evidence your being able to be an independent researcher that has a specific niche. And the other thing people often say is research excellence, and that's, why this research is so special. Give you just a few minutes to scribble down. So what I'd like us to do is kind of thinking about these niche, your vision for your research. I'm going to throw you into rooms for about 10, 15 minutes or so. And it's just, and Diego was talking about in the chats, like, yes, do talk to somebody who knows a lot about your field and talk to them about what they see isn't being done. But also, yeah, just talk to different people and start to get this vision of where you are and what you're doing and why that's important out. And just chatting with someone about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in either groups of 2 or 3s, looks like. And if you can just take a little time, introduce yourself and talk about what your research niche is, what your area is. Why is it, why is what you're doing important? Why is your approach novel and interesting? And it's in a safe environment, so you can absolutely sell yourself and talk to people about it and get excitement off of somebody else. So I think it's really worth getting that solid in your head. So I'm going to send you into rooms, and let's see, I'll give us about 6 minutes each. Well, maybe actually I should probably do 15 minutes because we have some 3s. So if you're in a 3, it's about 5 minutes each. And if you're in a 2, you have 7 minutes each. It's a little unfair, but hopefully it'll be okay. I'll open those rooms. If you just bounce, cool. Everyone should be bouncing back soon. How's everyone? Was it fun to talk to people about your research? I listened in on little bits, and it sounds like you guys are doing amazing stuff. I mean, the bits that I could understand with my English speaking and not able to speak anything else self, but
I think that I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time.
Really, really interesting. It's so good to talk to different people about your research and to explain why it's important. And the more you do that, the more at home you'll start to be with your place in the research area. Because and talking to people who are in entirely different fields or doing something entirely different, they'll ask questions that you're not used to getting. And that can help you think about your own research area and what you're doing, and be able to explain those why you're doing it even better. So don't just shy away when somebody asks you, oh, what do you do? Because you're like, oh my goodness, it's too complicated. I don't even want to. I remember doing that. But no, go in and talk to them and try and help them understand why it's important, because the better you get at that, the better you'll be at obtaining funding, but also just it helps your mind think about your research in a different way, and that makes you a better researcher. So I will encourage you to do that. We're going to have to get moving along because I think that was only 4, and I do have top 10 tips, so we're going to have to like speed through to get all 10, but we will do. It'll be fine. So from that research niche in that area and where you're sitting, the next thing is really thinking about compelling research questions. So, and compelling is that really it makes the reviewers, it makes the funders feel like this needs to be done. Yeah. So what makes a research question compelling? I have a little acronym for you. It does have to be feasible. So people have to believe you can do it. It has to be doable, and that you are the best person to do it. So, and that, I mean, you're not going to cure cancer in a year, or you're not, it's not going to be so big that actually this is something that you can deliver on. It should be interesting. So it fills a gap, and that gap needs filling. Lots of people, some will say, oh, well, this is my research question. Nobody's ever done it. And nobody has ever done it is important, but there are lots of things in this world nobody's ever done. And a fair few of them no one should ever do. So it's really, why is this important? Why does this gap need filling? And again, novel has not been done before, but but you have to show why it's important. So something might not have been done in this context before, but then why is that context important? Why is this bringing novelty? Why will it tell you something different to what this other context has told us? As always, and very important for research, but something that's really high on the research agenda these days is it does need to be ethical. Research integrity is very important, and showing that side of things will always be key. And relevant. And the relevant is an interesting thing, because relevant to whatever funder really cares about. So some funders are very important on it being relevant for a certain clinical outcome or for practice. Some will be very happy for it just to be relevant to the greater field. So figuring out what it needs to be relevant, what it's relevant for, and which funder is looking for that same thing is important. So it needs to be aligned with where you're putting things in. So that's a nice acronym for you. So your research questions should be finer. Feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. So you have to create finer research questions. And thinking about all of those aspects to make sure that that's coming out in everything that you're doing, and that people understand why it's feasible, why it's interesting, why it's novel, why it's ethical, and why it's relevant. So don't just assume people will know that. So if you wanted to throw some research questions in the box, in the chat box, I will save it, and I can give little bits of feedback on research questions if you want later. I can give it to Isabel to send to you guys if you have your name by it. So I'll just leave that open, and I'll save at the end if there's anything you want. Right, 6, and we're sort of talking about this a little bit previous, but important. And just a few things on writing. First,
Sorry, Doc, I have a doubt.
Before you write, read everything.
Don, we have can you hear us?
You have to follow the guidance.
Don?
Oh, my internet. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, there was.
Let me turn off my.
There was a question from. I'm not sure if it was Viriato.
Yeah, Cruz.
Pop in.
Cruz, sorry, Cruz.
I have some doubt about the novel. It is possible to do something similar like other people doing in another country, in my country, but it's a similar project. How can you spell about this? How can I say? Can you say
Well,
about this?
so there has to be a reason why it would matter. So you'd have to have a valid reason why you thought the outcomes or the answer would be different or could be different in your country compared to other countries. So I was chatting with a researcher the other day. He was looking at diabetes, and they had found well, the people have found that gut microbes are different in people with diabetes compared to people who don't have diabetes in Europe. Now, they were wanting to look in Africa to see if that was the same thing. And that you could do because the diet, you could talk about the diet being quite different and wanting to see if there's the same difference there or if it's really quite, or if you don't get that same difference in gut microbes when you have such a different diet. So how much of that is due to diet? And you could see that that could be an important thing. And if you found the same differences across quite different diets, that would be interesting because you would be like, goodness, even though diets are different, this difference in the gut makeup actually seems to be involved in diabetes no matter where you are. Or you might find that there's a different difference or no difference somewhere else. So maybe it gives you different ideas about diabetes depending on what the outcome of that research is. Now, if it was something that was really quite similar in the different contexts, then if you didn't have any reason to think it would be different, then it wouldn't be novel enough.
So let's say, for example, that someone is applying for. So let's say that in your country you don't have a system or a machine that you know that can really be crucial for whatever you are studying, and let's say that you apply for funding to buy that to, for example, repeat or do something that you have seen that it has been done somewhere else. So obviously the selling point is we don't have this and we would really benefit of having that. Do you think is a matter of looking for the right funder that could potentially that we could submit a project and they would help with buying this? Or
with equipment,
for example,
I tend to think what you're looking for is not replication. Like if it might be an initial replication, but if you're buying equipment, that's an investment in a area of research.
mm-hmm.
So people don't want to know, oh, this is going to be done for this experiment. People want to know this is going to be done for a range of different experiments.
So for example, could you say I'm studying this disease, and because I'm studying that, I need that machine, as it comes as a second objective of what you are applying for?
Yeah, it could be. But again, it has to be why you need that machine. And if everybody's using that machine and that data is already available, why it would be important for you, what maybe what your subject or patient cohort are that's different to other people, or if you're going to use it in a different way or on maybe a disease that's endemic to your area that isn't somewhere else. So you could replicate it there, but then you could also say, this would then give us data on these other things. So it really is, I would try to avoid straight replication and think of the value added. What you would learn beyond what we already know. Because good research should be able to be replicated, but people don't tend to do a whole funding bid for that. And yeah, equipment is about a program of work. So never think of just one experiment or one thing with it. Talk about the sustainability of equipment and how it can enable a research program that will last for years. Because that's where your value added for impact is. And it might be that you need to be able to train scientists in this technique because it's clinically relevant. So that might be less novel, but I mean, so you're doing PCR to be able to do lots of COVID tests. I don't know. So you need a PCR machine here because you have lots of COVID tests coming in. So those type of enabling technologies are a little different. They're not necessarily novel. Those are enabling a clinical relevance. So that's a kind of different level of funding.
All right. Thank you.
So I have a small question. I don't know if I can put the question here.
Yep.
Because for instance, what I at least listening of my colleagues' projects and so on. For instance, in this context of Africa, so we all know that we are in a development stage, right? So we are all trying to develop more our countries and, do research that can, be impactful for people's life, even if it's not something new. I mean, in terms of research itself or technology itself, it may be some kind of project that brings direct impact on people's life. Would that be enough justification whenever you go apply for funding? Because I mean, right now, for instance, at least when I think about the projects that I'm trying to do, obviously there's always this worry, this need that I seek to bring and to impact people's life, right? Even if, it's not a project that will bring completely new ways of doing science or leads to new discoveries. There are projects that directly impact the society, directly impact and contribute to development. So what about these situations? How would the founders look to these cases? I don't know if you have
well, there's lots of funders
an opinion about this.
Yeah. There are lots of funders that are definitely looking for that. And I would say novel to practice is absolutely relevant for novelty. So if a practice hasn't been embedded, then how to get that, and it has a little bit more of a social science, perhaps, twang to that research, but it's still novel. If you have a community and this practice has never been done there before, and you haven't gotten people on board, or you haven't managed to get the facilities within this country to do it, and this research is about how to bring this, whatever it is you're doing, to these local communities, that's novel. So I think that's perfectly relevant in terms of novel. And again, there are lots of different funders, and they might be different funders to some of the Blue Skies funders. So you have to find the one that's really interested in that. But I mean, there's loads, lots of the charitable funders are really very interested in that. So your Bill Gates might be, and lots of local places really do want to see things happening on the ground. And in those types of research, one of the things that can be most compelling is how you're working with those communities. So really having good participant engagement in those activities. So participants in terms of clinicians and people that would be delivering treatment, and also in terms of people who would be potentially patients and receiving treatment, and having them very integrated in the research process can be hugely strong, and is something that really only a researcher that knows the context well could do. So that can be a very nice, unique selling point for yourself. So it's absolutely important, and it absolutely, I think the world recognizes that as a niche where we need African researchers leading African research, because you can't do that coming in from the outside and do it well. Does that make sense? I've lost you.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Totally. And there's also one little point that is the fact that, for instance, because research is still very is in its early point in Africa. I can dare say this, at least in my country, Cape Verde. The way I think is that for us to at certain point manage or dare go to deeper source of interest, which is more like basic science, these characterizations of your real situation in the country that at the stage you are now, it's also important. So maybe some of the studies that may be considered just.
Is there another question there, Isabella, or is that the same one?
I think it's a different one. I don't know, Emilia, if you would like to.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to know what makes more attractive in a project that we want to implement a new service, a service that doesn't exist, and we know that this is it's really important for the patients. What makes it attractive in the projects, in this kind of projects?
So again, a new service is absolutely just justifying why the new service is important, which I'm sure you can. There's lots of reasons you can justify that, and talk about how you're going to measure impact of the service. So all of that, it's novel because the service isn't there. It's interesting because the service is really important and can make a difference. It's feasible because you have this ability to work within this community that other people don't. Again, ethical will be really important. You need to talk about how you're going to work with those stakeholders because it's very on the ground. And, you know, it's working with people and making sure they understand and are open to whatever change of service. And it's really, really relevant because it's something that needs to happen. So that makes a fantastic research question. It's just showing, showing that you're going to do it in a rigorous way where you're measuring outcomes and you're working with people to find the best way to implement things.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense. Pamela, are you okay now? Did you want to try and finish that question?
Oh yeah, sorry, I think there was a little problem. No, so what I was saying is just that maybe sometimes it's this basic research that may be just characterized as being just, which aims just characterize and do the basics, could give important information that may later on could be, you know, transform into more important things that could be rich and could bring more knowledge to the society. So sometimes there is this misconception, I think, in, you know, this kind of research, which is more characteristic, is not so important, but it may, you know, sometimes can give very important questions or arise very important questions that can end up in a very, very important investigation. So yeah, it's just to mention that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it's often, especially as newer researchers and in the beginning, I mean, we want to make a huge difference, don't you? You want to do this huge big thing, and it can be quite tempting to have these questions that are really huge. But no, research tends to be incremental. It's doing bit by bit by bit. It's just knowing what in your mind this bit needs to be done so that we'll know to be able to do the next bit. So it's really clearly defining that, and it doesn't have to be, and it probably can't be this huge thing that you think is going to change everything. It's learning something new that then will lead to the next thing, the next question, and the next question. It's just getting that better understanding.
I also wanted to add that, for example, I was at the Francis Crick Institute, and it's an institute that mainly does what you were saying, Pamela, basic research. So they do lots of like immunology, understanding mechanistics, so really basic science there. And they still attract lots of funding from different funders. So it's not about, at least, obviously I don't have the experience that you have, but what I've seen there is that was not a problem of being basic science. It was just, they were just really good selling themselves, and they were getting funding and attraction from everywhere. So it's really impressive. So I don't think you need to be worried about that maybe you think it doesn't have that much of a translation. It will have.
Yeah. Interesting can absolutely just be interesting to the field. We need to understand, we don't understand what these cells are doing. We don't understand why they're doing this. We need to understand this protein expression in these cells. That's fine. We don't know it. We need to know it. And there's various ways you can sell that. They may be involved in different disease states. They may just be generally involved in good health, and we need to understand why they work this way. So there's, I mean, gosh, I'm a neuroscientist by training. There's so much we don't know about the brain on a basic level. Like, and any of it is super important. So yeah, all of those things. And Diego's going in there and saying work on those lay summaries. Yeah, it helps to sell basic research. So yeah, in most proposals, they'll ask you for a lay summary and explaining why your research is important in a way that anyone can understand really helps with that. It makes you have to explain things. I think that actually gets us right onto the next one quite well about how to write. The first thing about writing is reading the guidance and make sure what you're writing matches what the call is asking for. Now that seems really obvious, but honestly, it's like the best, we didn't coordinate, no, we didn't. The best guidance really is to follow the guidance. And it seems like that's obvious, but so many people don't. They write what they want to say, but that comes off to reviewers and funders like politicians answering questions that weren't asked in an interview, and nobody likes that. It's annoying. So read what they're looking for and look at the words and phrases they're using. You can use those words and phrases. They really are looking for those things. So show them where they are. Not that you parrot it entirely, but you're really highlighting where you're showing these parts of the application, so that, again, the tired reviewers who just got done with a day of lecturing and working with PhD students and the equipment breaking down in their lab have come home to read this, they can see it. So think about that. And then some top tips, just do refer to the call and make sure that you're showing that. Like we said, titles and abstracts really do matter. So having a title that really clearly states what your proposal is about and has what's important about the proposal very clear without technical jargon. So that proposal should be able to be read, that title should be able to be read by people and have it be fairly obvious to all of the reviewer group. And the abstract, again, that's the next thing people are going to read, really clearly stating what your problem is, how you're going to address it, and why it's important, succinctly and clearly so it comes out. And this goes on to Diego's limiting the jargon. You all know what jargon is. It's all those lovely big technical words that we use. And oh my goodness, our gene expression people have loads and loads of different genes that have all different acronyms and so many different letters and numbers and things. And just, those can be quite hard when you're reading them. So when you're writing proposals, limiting as much as you can and really having very clear writing that can be understood by a broader audience than you think. Because by the time you're writing a proposal, you are the absolute expert in this area, and nobody else reading it will be quite the same expert as you. Now, they might be in that field, they might know it quite well, or they might not, but they're not going to have worked on your individual project. So that clarity is really important. Now, and always answering questions like why this is important, again, clearly. How are you going to do it? And so what, why is it important? In English, a really nice structure for this, English is it's a very weird language. Sorry about that. Because we have this way of making it seem easy because when you speak it, you can just throw words in whichever way and it makes sense when you're talking. But then when you write, it doesn't work like that. That's really annoying, isn't it? It's even annoying to English speakers, to tell you the truth. It is one of the things that everyone finds annoying. But a very simple way to think about structuring in English is the first sentence of each paragraph being a strong assertive sentence that says what is most important about this paragraph, what you're going to say. And lots of people that speak other languages that I think probably are much more eloquent than ours find that English is quite redundant in itself because we tend to repeat ourselves. We have that first sentence says what the argument is, states it out right. You don't have to find it anywhere. It's the first sentence. And then the next sentence is in that paragraph are evidence. So statement, and then all of the evidence to back it up. And the last sentence is a linker between that and the next paragraph. Now, an interesting thing you can do, and this is a trick to speed reading, if something's written well, you should be able to read the first sentence of each paragraph throughout and have it make sense. You shouldn't need the other bits. You should just be able to read it. And if you can't follow the logic, then that first sentence isn't assertive enough. Now, if you want something that sounds lovely, if you read the first sentence and then the last sentence of each paragraph and it flows really pretty like that, that sounds really nice in terms of English writing. Don't know if that works anywhere else, but it's a good way to check that you're getting those clear messages out because they should be hitting at the top of the sentence, top of the paragraphs, and then transitioning at the end of the paragraphs, and just popping out so that it's really easy to find. And then the middle is all about why. So what data do you have to back it up? What have you done to back it up? Clear evidence within that. Does that make sense? It's a neat trick to getting through papers really quickly, actually. Going through and reading, reading those. yet, Peel. Cool. So I have 15 minutes, and how many tips? 3 more tips. Okay, cool. We can do this. Other thing is, do find good collaborators. Collaborators are amazing, but not good collaborators are the worst. So working with good people cuts the amount you have to do down so much. It elevates what you can do so much. Working with people that are not good collaborators will drive you insane. So finding good collaborators is really, really important. What makes a good collaborator? Good collaborators value you and value what you contribute. Good collaborators meet deadlines. Yeah, you need that. Good collaborators are responsive to feedback, so you can give them feedback, and also will give you good feedback. And they should be supporting your career development and sharing their networks. So a good collaborator really is a good partner. Good collaborators don't take credit for your work. They don't leave you to pull everything together all by yourself. They don't ignore your ideas or comments, and they don't leave you out of the loop on important decisions. So, and I would say in your life, you will find people that fall into both good and bad categories. The one thing I've learned in my 40 odd, almost 50 years on this planet is learn from it and let the ones go that aren't adding value. It can be annoying and they're frustrating, but it's best not dwelling on it. Get through what you need to get through, and then don't do anything else with them in future. And stick with the good collaborators and find things to do with them and flourish. So finding good people, collecting them, keeping them over the years, and then by the time you're older, you'll have a lovely pot of fantastic good people you can work with, and you don't need the less good people, if that makes sense. And sometimes it can be tempting because maybe this person is so high flying and they have this wonderful name, but if they're not supporting you, they're not worth it. It's better to find somebody else that's supporting you. So run away from those. When you're looking for collaborators, do think outside of the box. It's not always about the biggest name in the world. Peer-to-peer collaborations can be amazing. So you guys, you and your Parsuk group, you're fantastic. Getting to know people who are at the same level and coming up together. You have fantastic new ideas, and finding people to work with that are coming up together just means you have a lifetime of collaborations to look forward to. So that's a fantastic thing to look at. Drawing in interdisciplinary experience, so people who have a different perspective. Lots of you were talking a lot about research that embeds different types of things into practice. Teaming up with people who are social scientists and who understand research in how people behave and why they behave in a certain way and how they perceive their world can really help us biomedical people understand how to take something that we really know will help and put it into a community. And it's so important. I mean, you look at things like vaccine hesitancy and people being really scared to take up different medical practices and procedures. And lots of those answers aren't in biology. Those can be in social science or in psychology. So having people that are slightly different to you can help. International is fabulous. So you have somebody in this country and then somebody in another country, and you're looking at something and seeing that it's the same or different across countries. That's fantastic. and intersectorial collaboration. So people, you with your academic research, working with people that are in a different sector and looking, that's a fantastic way to get research to translate across. So think outside of the box, and these are fantastic, really interesting collaborations that can help you identify these unique selling points for grants. So network, network, network. Last, well, eight, get feedback. Feedback's scary, isn't it? It's horrible. People like tell you they didn't like it. I have to tell you, feedback is so important. We're doing this grant writing, our big workshop we're doing last week or 2 weeks ago. And we had one of our alumni speakers come in talking about how they went from their grant writing workshop they did a few years ago to landing a fantastic big grant. And they said the grant that they won, that was really quite in 6 figures, they got 27 people to read it and give them feedback. It's lots and lots of feedback is helpful. So, and it can be hard and it can be scary because it's not always easy to take criticism. But I always say, take feedback as a gift. If somebody says they'll give you feedback, be very kind to them and get them what they need to read well in advance. Let them know when you need it back from. And when they have given you the feedback, always thank them. And that's wonderful. But it is a gift that then you can decide what to do with. So it might be that it's feedback that will change everything, or it might be it's feedback that you don't agree with. But always consider it and think about it. So if somebody says this doesn't make sense, it might be that it makes sense. You just didn't explain it right. So then you understand, oh, I need to explain that better. I would say, certainly if you're putting in a big grant, you should have at least 5 people looking at it before it goes out. And that means you have to identify the right people and identify a range of different people. So people that will look at it from different points of view and give you really honest feedback. It will make it so much better. Remember, these reviewers are just researchers that are reading it from a different point of view. So the more people you can get that look like those reviewers giving you feedback, the better your grant will be. Get feedback. Down to 9, plan ahead. Plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. And this is something I've just talking again to researchers about. Oh, I never seem to get things done on time, or by the time I get there, I'm rushing through it and it's never good enough. And it's all about planning ahead. And I would say pre-funding plan. So I've already talked to you about knowing your potential funders, know who they are, know what they fund, be ready for them. Learn about your institution. So what resources do you have in your institution? Do you not have any resources, but do you have people that know things? Investigate all of this ahead of time. Do you have research services that can help you with grants or help you identify grants or help you with the outlining of your project or the finance of your grant? Do you have any people in your department that are just really good at that you can get to know ahead of time? So find those people, not at last minute when you need, oh, I need it right now, but way ahead of time so that you know to talk to those people early and you know what they can do for you and what they can't. Also learn about resources outside of your institution. So any training, any talks, any networks, all of these things you can do ahead of time. And you can build up and you can be ready. So you can be networking and finding those collaborators so that when a call comes up, you have it. It's usually too late to make collaborators if you're not there already. So build those networks early. Think about how much things cost early. If you have your eye on that lovely shiny equipment, have an idea of how much it costs and keep an eye on it. That way it just saves you loads of time in the end. And start writing early. I would say start writing now. And you're like, oh, I don't even have a call. I wouldn't know what to write. Loads and loads of research show that academics and researchers who write little bits every week, even if there's not a paper, even if there's not a call, but are writing their ideas, writing their thoughts, writing about their data, writing their interpretation. Set aside an hour to 3 hours a week. If you do that consistently, they get more publications, they get more grants, they get more citations, they get more funding. And it's because when those opportunities come up, there's already something there. So the finished product is so much better. I know that's a horrible thing to hear, but yes, start writing tomorrow. And then during the funding call, make sure you plan to have drafts well in advance so people can give you feedback. Tell the people when you're going to give them the draft and when you need the feedback back. Make sure you get all of the finance information and everything you need from your institution. Often they need letters. You need to know who to go to for those. Make sure your collaborators know what you need and they have deadlines. Deadlines before the end deadline, very important. Do block off time to work on the grant. If you can't do that, you might as well not even apply if you can't dedicate time. It's not worth doing. It's not worth doing it halfway. If you're not going to commit, if you can't commit, wait for the next one. The more you have done in advance, the easier it is. And it always, always, always takes longer. So try and find some contingency time in there as well. Post-submission, keep in touch with collaborators. You can start trying to prepare for getting this through, but don't do anything that won't be helpful if you don't succeed, because you can't guarantee that. Keep your eye out for other opportunities. It's worth not putting all of your hopes into one thing, but never, ever, ever submit the same proposal to 2 different places or more at the same time. Because funding bodies often, these are very small groups of people, our reviewers, yeah? It's highly likely it could end up in the same reviewers' hands, and that will look bad, and the funders will be unhappy, and it's not worth the risk. So don't do that. My last tip, be resilient. If you're rejected, it happens. More applications are rejected than are won. Even prominent scientists are rejected. It's just the way life is. Get feedback, learn from feedback, talk to the funders, talk to supportive academics, learn as much as possible from the experience, and move on. This is what it is to be in research. You will not get everything through. It's just the way life is. So, life of an academic. But you might be successful. Hopefully you'll be successful. One day you'll be successful and yay! And then, oh my gosh, I said I would do all of that. Celebrate, plan, work to deliver, but do realize novel research has twists and turns, so sometimes things won't go to plan. The key is to be honest with your collaborators and funders. And if something happens that was unexpected, you just let people know and you replan. That being a researcher is all about resilience. So you have to be ready for that. And even when there's success initially, there'll be the experiment that doesn't work or the idea that doesn't pan out. That's all part of research. It's how you use that and interpret that and honestly work with your stakeholders that really matters. All anyone ever can want from you is to deliver the best science you can. And that's what will build your positive reputation, and that's what will help you get more grants in the future. Right, so those are our top tips. I'll send you all the slides so you have those. I would say your homework is starting to work now. So think about what you're going to do to help yourself be successful in funding, what you're going to do this week, what you're going to do next week. Plan something, put something in your diary that is your time to move yourself forward. Think about the skills you need. Think about the network you need. Think about where you want to be and just keep working your way to it inch by inch. and you'll get there because you guys have amazing, interesting ideas that you're working on. Right, and do keep your eye out for our ARIF training and fellowship programs. There's going to be some announcements out in the next month, so I put a website there. And I'll stop now. And I can stick around for a while longer for any questions anyone might have. So
Thank you so much, Dawn, for the great presentation and using a bit of the feedback that we got from the first seminar. I would like to encourage you guys to ask any questions you might have. I love the examples, Dawn. Thanks.
anything on your mind, or is it too late in the evening to be thinking anymore?
Hi, Tom. Maybe I can ask some tips about sending grant proposal to multiple fundings. I mean, not the same, but if you want complementary research proposal to be sent to different funding bodies, what would be the most correct procedure to do that?
So at any active time, research can't be funded by multiple bodies that's exactly the same. Now you might have two complementary research questions that work well together, but they should also work independently because you might get one and not the other.
Yeah.
So you can't guarantee you'll get them both. So you absolutely can do that and send those out at the same times. And that's a really smart thing to be thinking about, having multiple directions or things that you want to look at. But if you think about it, I mean, and thinking from the funder's perspective is important. They want to, their whole job is to fund research that makes a difference in this world. And they're wanting to identify the best places and the best people that do that. And they put a lot of effort into it. I mean, they have their own staff that's going through this. They identify reviewers. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot of process. So if you put it in one place and you put it in another place and you get both, it's not ethical to take the money twice to do the same thing. So you would have to tell one of them, I got this other money. And then they just wasted all of their time. So I know you feel from a researcher's point of view, oh my goodness, well, I don't want to waste my time, but these people have money and they don't want to waste their time. And it's just like publication. You can't submit a publication to two different places. And funders talk. It's a small community. And reviewers talk. It's really not worth it at all. And anyway, I mean, you can't be a researcher if you don't have more than one research question or one research idea. So have a few different ideas going in your head. It's lovely if they work together nicely to build your niche. And chances are that different funders will have different flavors anyway. So you can have your research grant that favors this type of funder more, and then maybe one that favors this other type of funder. Yeah, so I would just, you want to keep the funders feeling positive about you, I would say. It's really important. they're important stakeholders. And if you don't, again, you can talk to them. You can say, are these two ideas too close? I'm thinking of submitting this other idea somewhere else, or is this the idea you're more, you can absolutely just chat with funding people and they'll be very honest with you. I don't know if you have, maybe Diego, you have some other ideas on that because you're in the area.
Diogo, do you have any tips as well
on that from a funding point of view?
Just trying to unmute. I mean, I think you're covering everything. It's I don't want to repeat, but it's exactly that. Usually when we're talking about open calls, there's always opportunities to look for webinars or sessions where they usually talk about the objectives of that particular funding call. You'll always have grant advisors, usually in funding organizations that will, respond to, what is in scope for that funding call, what are the things that they don't fund, and have that as well very clear, so you don't really, budget for something that it's there on the website that they don't fund at all. I think that also shows that, applicants are not really paying attention. But then at the same time, it's like, I think being quite proportionate with the amount of information they're giving and the budget and the scale of the grant funding schemes, which is kind of a difficult one to get right, because it takes some experience to know that, for a grant that is as small as, 50K or 100K, you don't need to write a grant proposal of 100 pages. But if you're talking about, a big research group that you're coordinating, you do need a lot of resources. You're asking for equipment, you're asking for a multi-year commitment. The proposal needs to be more detailed, right? And I think it's always a good idea to sort of start breaking down exactly the things that you need to talk about, and have sort of an iteration before you submit a proposal. And every time the funder comes back at you with questions, never take those questions very personally, because they want to help you. And sometimes they really want to just to clarify something, and see that as an opportunity to offer your best clarification possible. And not really taking it as, oh, they try to criticize my research. They're usually not. If that's the case, you're usually not even selected to go forward. They will let you know very clearly. Yeah, but that's what I would say. I would probably say for Portuguese speaking applicants, you're talking about language before. I think that's a massive difference if you're applying for funds coming from the US, Canada, Australia, UK, because the format is very, very, very specific. The language is very specific. If you go to Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, Imperial, they have, a lot of people that have been applying for grants for years. So I think always trying to get advice on the exact format of how they prefer to read, and being nice to the reviewer and the granting organization, I think is always helpful too. It's hard, but you can get there for sure.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that it's like going for an interview, isn't it? You need to prepare to know a lot about yourself, to know a lot about how you can sell yourself, and a lot about who's the other person that is interviewing you.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's interesting you said, that American versus Britain versus Australia, because they use English differently. It's really worth, if you can, when I was talking about getting feedback from people, try to get feedback from somebody that really knows the place. So if you can grab a British person, if you're sending it to a UK funder, or an American person if you're sending it to American funder, because and I'm American originally and I live in the UK now. We use English differently to make argument, and different types of argument are acceptable in different places. So it's quite handy to have somebody like that. So again, your network, build your network, but do also talk to the funders, because they will tell you, listen to them and see what they say, because they'll give you hints to that too. And gosh, yeah, Diego, if they're asking you questions, that's a huge compliment. They don't have to ask you questions. They could just throw your stuff away. So them coming back to ask you questions means they're interested. Then be really nice. And can I get you anything else? Some coffee with that? I don't know. Because yeah, that's definitely only would happen for research that they find interesting, or people that they find interesting.
I'm just conscious of the time, and but if you have a few more minutes, Dawn, maybe we can try to wrap up and use the last 5 minutes to get some other questions, if you have any. Mais alguma pergunta? No?
No.
Okay. Don, can you hear us?
I can. I just got a
Okay.
thing saying I'm unstable though. Maybe I'll
Yeah, I think we
let me there. Let me do that and see if that's better.
okay, I think we have we can now wrap up and finalize it. And I just wanted to thanks Don very much for the great presentation and full of examples, really interactive. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, please do share the slides with me, and I will make sure that I pass it on to all of you to have it. And also this list of some of the funders that we discussed at the beginning, which you might find useful for your own research. Obviously, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We have another webinar coming up next month, which will also be in grant funding, but also more specific for translational funding. So anything to do with real applications, let's say. I also obviously want to thank Carlos Gulbenkian for the support on these activities. And please do watch out for our website. There is more description on the upcoming webinars. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.